Hey, what's up? Dave with Brazos Valley Strength. So today's video will be the block review of the first block of however many it'll be that will end up accomplishing this full year of programming for everyone. I just want to let you know that there's probably 2 more weeks left when I release the other video or the next video for the second block. I'll be removing this block, so the purpose of this is to hopefully have people following along and watching these videos simultaneously so that you can be understanding what the purposes are, what the goals are, and just really trying to accomplish 2 things: is give you free programming, let you do these things, but also dive into what's going on behind the scenes and not just say, here's your free program. The goal is to actually have you watching these reviews, these summaries, and trying to learn as an athlete, as a coach, or those kind of things. So anyway, this video or this program will be up for 2 more weeks until I release the next block, and then this one's coming down. So if you at least if you grab it, then you'll be good to have it for forever, I guess, at that point. So anyway, as far as a block review here, what I want to do is I want to look at. I'm going to talk specifics about each of my lifts and what I don't think that I'm going to dive too much into the decisions for the next block. I'll talk kind of generalities with my assessment of this current block. And then the next block, I'll talk about the decisions that I made in order to keep moving forward. But what I want to do with this one is to look at this block, do this review from the stance as an athlete. I hopefully will try to only wear that hat in this video. And the purpose of that is going to be you as the athlete, whether you're being coached by me or not, hopefully having you have a better dialogue either with yourself if you're self-coached, or with your coach. I think that's one of the things that whenever I'm coaching athletes is trying to get each other, or the athlete, I guess, from my end, get on the same page as soon as possible as far as the feedback that I'm expecting. And I think a lot of times people are coming in just expecting, they'll send me a video on its own, and then I say, like, okay, tell me more, right? And so that's what this is going to be for, is going to be when I'm going through this program, this block, I'm not going to be talking about my technique. Obviously, I've been lifting a long time. There's not much that I'm trying to work on as far as my technique, but there are certainly things that I'm trying to do based on the way that I'm moving, the way that I'm feeling, to get stronger. So this video should give you some insight into the things that I'm looking at myself, how I'm analyzing the blocks, and what you should be looking for with talking to yourself to write better programming or communicating with your coach. So the first thing I think that you should be looking at as an athlete is not getting too specific into the details as far as, are you getting stronger every single session? I think that is one of the biggest mistakes that any athlete makes consistently, ever. When they're analyzing each day or communicating with me as a coach, a lot of times they view a session that is either the same as the previous week or down from the previous week or not up as much as they expected from the previous week as a really bad thing, as something that they've gotten weaker all of a sudden. And even within a block, if they don't see substantial increases within a block, that there's problems there. And I think one of the big things that we need to do is be a bit intuitive. Is like with my spreadsheets, I have all these pages to where we can track the data, the volume, the intensity, the estimated maxes. And actually, when we're looking at mine here, it's going to show that I did really, really well, but I'll dive into some of why. But being able to be patient with those things and just go off the intuition as far as, do you feel like you're getting stronger? Do you feel like this work is appropriate? All those kind of things. And there's not a set answer to being able to, like, how to define that necessarily. But I think one of the ways that people mess up consistently very quickly with their blocks is they analyze things too early. And with my block here, if I'm looking at my estimated maxes on all of my lifts, I started off with some relatively low numbers. My first and second week were about the same on both lifts, or on every lift. But my first week on squat was my estimated 1 rep max was 306 kilos. On bench press, it was 104 kilos, about 105. And on deadlift, it was 353 kilos. So those were the estimated maxes on, some stuff from week 1. And, so that means that I was performing really, really light weights on the first week. So let's see, my first squat was 270 kilos on week 1. My first deadlift was 300 kilos. My first single of the block was 300 kilos. And on bench press, it was 170 kilos. So really light numbers to start off with, even with singles. And that's the mistake that so many people make. The last block I did, I ended up, with some really good numbers. I felt really confident, really strong coming into this block. And I was deliberate about making sure that I left myself room to progress. I think probably I could have gone up on all of these numbers by a little bit, not a whole lot. I was being a bit conservative. But to me, there's much more. I've seen a much stronger correlation between blocks that I start much lighter here and blocks that I end up being very, very good, which I would say that this was a very good block. And there's other blocks that I end up starting extremely strong, and I'm really excited. Like my first week, I may squat 290 kilos or something instead of 270, and I think like, oh man, I'm going to be squatting 700 multiple times this block, and they just very rarely get any better. And so whether momentum is a real thing or not, it certainly feels like it in the moment. And so giving yourself room to progress and, expecting there to be some lag at times is a really, really big deal for athletes to run into these blocks and try to judge their training on a macro level rather than a micro level, and thinking that they're going to be their strongest on week 1 is just not a smart thing, and usually sets people up for some pretty difficult training throughout the rest of the weeks rather than creating momentum. So in this case, like I had very, very smooth progressions, but I think that's a sign that the block was written appropriately, that it was managed well from my end. But some of the things that I felt I touched on a little bit in the last block. So I'll go lift by lift and kind of give my analysis as a lifter in the moment. So with my squats, one of the things we talked about in the last video was that I started off the block doing squats 3 times a week, and I just never really felt fresh. Day 2 or the second squat day and the third squat day just never felt like I was moving really comfortably. So I ended up getting rid of the squat day from day 3, the second squat day, and putting that volume at the end of the third squat day, so day 5. And it ended up feeling significantly better. And so looking at those 2 sessions, I mentioned in the previous video that I didn't really feel like high bar squats were something that was going to dramatically make me stronger, and I certainly still feel that way. But they did a good job of giving me some light reps to really get a good feeling of my confidence, confidence back from my squat, being really comfortable there. But I think I'm kind of done with them. I think, I hit some good numbers at the end. I squatted 210 kilos for a really easy set of 5, which I think is, probably my best ever set of 5 on high bar squats. But that's, it's only 475 pounds, or, it's way under what my best, it's 100 kilos under my best single on low bar squats, right? So it's tough for me to really imagine that that's something that's contributing highly to my success, as getting stronger, whether it feels difficult or not. It's just too big of a gap there. And so one of my thoughts with my squatting here is that my objective was to have, kind of this polarization between the heavy reps and the light reps that I was doing. And I still kind of feel that way, but I'm now feeling like I need to find a way of getting a little bit more heavy exposure, because currently at the moment, if I was doing the squatting on day 2, I just wasn't feeling fresh. Like that was hopefully going to get me a bit more heavy low bar squatting, but I didn't like how it made me feel. I never felt comfortable squatting. Removing that helped. But then all the squatting at the end of the week, I felt pretty good with the single that I was doing, but the 2 sets of 4 was good, but it just like that day kind of started to drag on, and especially as I was getting stronger and working into heavier and heavier loads, it just started to feel like trying to disperse up that intensity a little bit better, in some way, moving some competition squats to day one, if I can maintain that and feel fresh, would probably be a better option. And so looking at my, my data page from this block, I had 25% heavy, 30% light, and then 45% medium. And I kind of feel like what I want to do is increase both the heavy and the light and let the the intermediate loads kind of shift a little bit. Is kind of where I'm at, is that I think that just prioritizing, on either end of the spectrum is what am I trying to accomplish, is pushing some of the heavy stuff to get more comfortable with those loads, because I haven't really hit a bunch of stuff 300 kilos and above. So just some singles, some reps that are over 600 that I kind of need to feel those a bit more. But then balancing that with some light reps, some maybe some higher rep ranges, those kind of things. So yeah, and at the end of the day, I'm super happy with my squatting. I think it ended up being one of the better blocks, surprisingly, because I wasn't doing some of the stuff that I really think makes my squat really good, like belt squats and those kind of things, which, now, after this block, I said in the last video that I wasn't expecting my squat to do a whole lot, and it did. It was really, really good. And so then, I kind of started to reevaluate a little bit of what I need as far as accessories. And I was, I think my plan heading into the next block was to give myself, 2 days a week of belt squats. And now I'm thinking, man, I was just doing 1 day a week with dumbbell split squats, which I, don't think is a super hard variation, as far as like fatigue or whatever. So I'm now thinking, okay, well, maybe don't overdo it with the accessories. So yeah, like that was my, intuition as an athlete, is thinking like, I still feel pretty good despite some of my, some of my reservations about the way this block was written. But yeah, very excellent squat block. Made some adjustments halfway through just based on, how I was feeling, how things were moving, and ended up being really successful, squatting 300 kilos comfortably 4 weeks in a row, plus or minus 5 kilos. But yeah, ended up being a very, very good block there. So bench press as usual is a bit of a frustration for me, but I said in the last video, the goal of this block was to get myself back to being, healthy again after some many months of struggling with a shoulder injury, and I'm back. I think the goal was accomplished with this block. I didn't hit any big PRs or anything. I benched a really good single with 182 kilos. My meet best at this point is still 192. So, which, as embarrassing as that is, 182 is totally fine, right? Like I'm in good shape to be able to hit a PR there, but I feel like I need significantly more than just a PR on bench press to be to challenge up into the good totals, get up close to 2,000 pounds or whatever, like, the other guys are capable of hitting. So with this block, I do think that I learned a significant amount about my bench press. It was going really, really well until basically it didn't the last week. And so the videos that I have are from the final week. I didn't film a whole lot the week right before the one we're talking about, or I guess the one I have videos of. But that week was the best week. And my feeling at this point was not about like time to peak or, about getting, that I maximize the results out of this block or anything like that. But I'm now feeling like, my bench came back really, really well from some reductions in volume and some reductions in intensity, and just kind of being a bit more conservative overall. Kind of the same things that I've been saying. The trend is going to be pick your punches, I think, on all these lifts. But being conservative with what I was choosing, conservative with load selections, certainly not forcing singles or those kind of things. And it really, I started to have some really good days. But I think I ended up on the last week feeling like I started the week with maybe my best 3-count pause single of the whole block. I certainly felt like I could have gone up on that day, but I was conservative, saying like, oh, we're going to have a really good week. And then, a bit of a crash and burn after that. And I think one of the things that I've felt all like forever with my bench press is that probably I've done a bad job of feeling like, I'm tough or whatever. And I can work myself to a better bench press and, continue to bash my head against the wall saying I need to be doing 4 days a week or, 5 days a week even at times. But, pulling back to 3 days a week initially because of the injury, feeling a lot more fresh with my bench press, especially in these early phases. I was benching some lower numbers, but the projected maxes from those lower numbers were certainly up, around, into the 190s and those kind of things, even having very limited training at that point. And so I think, at this point, what I'm kind of learning about myself is that I should probably be doing less. Or being much more conservative overall with how much I'm forcing things on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. And I think the biggest thing I compare it to is actually just my squat, is that by increasing my squat frequency, I ended up feeling just beat up and a little bit worse all the time. And I just, removed a day, put some of it on the other day, but it was really light stuff, lighter than it was on the other day, and immediately just felt better and felt more fresh. And so with the bench press, that's really the direction that I feel like I'm wanting to head with everything, is instead of saying, well, let's just maintain frequency, let's continue to push things hard because I can, because I'm tough, because I'm willing to do it, is kind of forcing myself to hold back and taking out like one accessory per day and taking out some of the intensity per day, 1 RPE off the top end or those kind of things. Mostly sticking to the RPE, which I think I've done a good job of this block. But holding myself accountable with all of the stuff that I know works other places. But I think for almost everyone, bench press tends to be the one that we have. We have ego on all the lifts, but bench press, I don't know, it brings out that like masculinity in a lot of us guys here. And we just have trouble taking weight off the bar. We'll be willing to do, have some fluctuations on squatting and deadlifting, especially on the lighter sessions. But with the bench press, it just seems like if I'm not hitting this exact number every single time, then my manhood is in doubt. And I've, whether I feel exactly that way or not, like I think there's something that's inside of me that makes me just want to go harder on bench press, because it doesn't have the same like immediate negative feedback. You go too hard on a squat or a deadlift and like it's horrible, right? And bench press, I think we're willing to get a little bit closer to failure, a bit sloppier, all those kind of things, and then stagnate. And that's where I've been, I think, for too long. So pulling back on bench press is the main thing that I'm finally getting myself to do. Choosing going a bit lighter, not just doing a ton of like this intermediate. I think I use the example, I called it junk volume. Again, I don't think that's the correct term, but, a bunch of like sets of 5 and 6, that are at a high to moderate RPE, rather my plan is to do most of my bench pressing in the lower rep ranges, but even, with lowish RPEs. I'll talk about deadlifts, but I think a similar kind of style to deadlifting is really my plan with my bench press, and then push harder on some of the accessory movements like dumbbell bench press or whatever the other exercises that are a bit more suited for hypertrophy, and just pull back some, and I think that at the moment my bench press is doing well, and I think the best bench pressing I had of my life was actually when I was working with Mike of Reactive Training Systems, Mike Tushir, and I was doing less sets, less volume, everything, and it jumped up. I benched 200 kilos, I attempted 205 kilos in a block, and so just way better bench pressing that I think a lot of this work overall has done for me. So especially heading into nationals, I think I'm excited about what I think I can do over the next few months. I think I have a plan as far as being able to pull back more when it comes to nationals with accessories and those kind of things, but it's about timing. And currently I feel like, okay, we'll cut out an accessory, keep doing the bench pressing that I'm doing, and just like, so shave off just a little bit on the top, but then leave enough room there so that I can shave off a bit more, and then really have the pure focused approach heading into nationals and not have a lot of the accessories holding me back as far as my bench press. So anyway, I just kind of have a little bit of a nagging pec thing at this point that kind of showed up. Triceps were really feeling dead. So, kind of these signs of like, maybe doing a bit too much. and which probably wasn't there early because I was just like using lighter loads. I was a lot weaker. So near the end, it was kind of giving me those signs to just chill a little bit. So that's it's a scary thing to do, to say I'm going to do less with the goal of getting stronger. But it's certainly working on my squats and my deadlifts. And so from that perspective, I really think it's going to do something that serves me well. Okay, so the final one to talk about here is deadlifts. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know that this was for sure the best deadlifting of my whole life. So I guess I have some thoughts, overall. The deadlift setup, I mentioned, I think early in this block, talking on Instagram about how I loved what I had set up. And I took the approach that I've been talking about with all of the lifts, is just saying I want to do a bit heavier work, a bit heavier, but also some lower intensity, lower proximity to failure. So I think in the last video, some of the videos that I showed were just some really, really easy reps. And a lot of them were getting up close to like 700 that I was doing. Let me see. I was talking about week 3 in that video. But I was some doubles, 290, and then it took a big jump the following week because my deadlift really started to take off when I took away the squats. But yeah, so 290 there, 305, then it was like 320 the following week. So I just got some humongous jumps on deadlifts as far as how things were feeling. And I was doing a lot of stuff that was percentage based with my rep work to keep the RPE lower. I was doing doubles at 77, 80%. At the end of the week, doing just 3 sets, working up to a set of 4 to 7 RPE. And it just went really, really well. The combination of both those things, like really, really making sure that the fatigue was low on day 3, helped me feel comfortable going into squats. But I just never felt beat up from deadlifting. And I was consistently performing a little bit better every week. And like I said at the beginning of the video, one of the biggest parts of what I think accomplished that was starting off so light. Starting off as light as what I did. 300 kilos on week 1 was my single. Week 2, I went up to 325 kilos, and just kept going slow with things and never really forced it. Just let my strength tell me what number to put on the bar. And actually, this may be something that I've been talking about this a little bit more with some of my athletes, and been implementing this as a lifter. This was a pure lifter thing rather than a coach thing, because I think just this week I've started to share this, is that I'm starting as a tool to get myself to hold back a little bit more, is I'm only letting myself take bigger jumps. So let's say like 5 kilos on bench press and 10 kilos on squat or deadlift from my previous week. If I felt like my previous week was an appropriate load. If I pulled 320 kilos, I'm only going to go up to 330 kilos if I know for sure that that's going to be within my RPE, within the intensity that I prescribed. And it has made a big difference, because if I do my last warm up and I start to question if a 10 kilo jump from my last warm up or 10 kilos above the previous week is something that I'm comfortable doing, I just don't do it. And it's made me be a bit more conservative. And I think that's where the whole theme of this video is. I started conservative, I stayed conservative until like right at the very end, I kind of sent it on deadlift, but that was the only one that I really sent it on. But I just had so many good sessions. They just kept getting better. And then I was surprised if I stuck to that rule of only going up, X amount, 5 kilos or 10 kilos, depending on the lift. I stuck to that really well this block. And it turned out that I think just having, I was able to go up more often than I really thought. Instead of forcing things and then having to repeat, for a number of weeks in a row. So actually, by saying I'm only going to go up if a bigger jump feels good, and then not doing it, it actually sped up some of my progress, I think. And that's just a hard thing for a lot of people. If the RP is 8 and you hit it at, a 7 or, 7.25, but the next one's kind of scary. I think a lot of people just feel like they're wasting their time if they're not, going, really hard. So I think the other side of this conversation is, maybe for me, just lighter intensity is the way to go. This may not be the right thing for everyone. Like actually getting closer to RP, or even like, going close to 8.5, 9 RP more consistently, may be something that benefits a lot more people. My experience has not been that way. Is that like when I say I need some more heavy stuff, I need like, singles at a 7, but like some more of those rather than, singles, triples, doubles at like a 9 or a 10. And so that's kind of the difference. Is I feel like I need exposure to some heavier weights, but not stuff that's really close to failure. And so that has been a big difference here. This deadlifting is some of the lightest deadlifting, some of the least amount of volume that I've done with deadlifting, but I felt fantastic through this whole thing. And I just think some of the organization was great. Now, one of the issues that ended up happening, with the program, the week before the big deadlift, the 815 double that I did, which is about 5 kilos above the best single I've ever pulled. I did a single at 350 kilos, and it kind of slipped out of my hand a little. It was okay, but it slipped out of my hand a little bit at the top. I haven't really been doing any grip training. I've really only been pulling that one single. I did some of the triples early on, and then I switched to straps. So I feel like the double with straps was probably indicative of my strength, but in no way can I trust that strength as far as my singles actually being there. Absolutely, that was something that aided me. But from my experience, my grip training is something that I can fix really quickly. I can do some bar holds, which I'm planning on doing in this next block, and my grip heading into my last competition was actually really bad. Like 6 weeks after the competition, I did 6 weeks of bar holds, and I had the strongest grip I've ever had. 800 pounds was super easy to hold. So I'm not worried about that double and feeling like, well, I did straps, my grip strength is going to hold me back. It's something that I feel like I can train, but extremely pleased with the strength that I had there. And yeah, just to finish with an absurd PR like that, to pull above my best single. I was just warming up, and for some reason earlier in the week, I felt like, I think I'm feeling that 350 was pretty fast. I think if my grip didn't slip, it would have been faster. I was planning on using straps the whole time, and I was like, we'll see. I think maybe, 350 to 360 is probably a smart number. But maybe I'll pull 370 for a double. And I think having some of those, getting yourself hyped about some of those sessions or some of those numbers can be a beneficial thing, when chosen correctly. That was the only lift out of this whole block that I really went after. And it was something that, especially based on the day, I did 350 for a double before it. And that one felt effortless, so it certainly had merit for going that hard. But yeah, deadlift was fantastic. I'm glad that the feelings that I had early in the block were something that carried through, and I think probably one of the most valuable things that I had in here were the light deadlifts at the end of the week. Was that I felt probably on week 2 or 3 that my light deadlifts really clicked, and like immediately after that, my heavy deadlifts on the day 3 just started to click as well. So, having some of the light enough stuff to just let yourself have some mindless rep work, I think can be something, if you're being mindful enough with those mindless reps, to have it transfer well. But anyway, I'm maybe back, I maybe back to the best deadlifting I've ever done. For sure. I mean, that was a big PR, but, feeling like my confidence is just unwavering at this point. And that, now again, feeling like the sky is sort of the limit as far as what I'll be able to deadlift in the future. So just some final thoughts, if you made it all the way here, is that the big overarching principle that I think was through the theme that was through this whole video talking about my program and how I, executed this as an athlete, was the stuff that was on paper, I consistently was a bit under. I started a bit lighter than I think I could have. I was a bit conservative with some of my progressions. I was getting close, but I was mindful in the early weeks to set myself up for some bigger stuff later and to keep myself feeling good. So, speaking just as an athlete here, I think that's an important concept, is not to hero your training, not to feel like the numbers that you're competing every day. The goal is to be getting stronger, and the best way to do that is to put together as many good sessions as you can. You're not going to get stronger by forcing these new numbers. I want to bench 300 pounds, so I'm just going to take a bunch of shots at it. And even though 290 was the hardest thing I've ever done last week, I'm going to load 300 today. I think it's close. Or 290 was horrible last week, but I'm just going to keep trying and it's going to get better, one of these days. And those things just don't work. But giving yourself room to progress and room to train, and not treating your singles as the whole workout, but just a component of the workout. All of those things, I think this block was something that I just executed. This was one of the best, most, the cleanest blocks from my end as far as me just executing the program, to the best as I could as an athlete, and it ended up with some really, really big numbers. And I think, if I were to look at the early phases of my tracking page and my estimated maxes, my estimated max, my total on week 1 was 845. Even by, it took me 3 weeks to get back up with estimated maxes, wasn't even hitting the numbers, to 868, which would essentially match my meet PR total, right? So I was training well below actual numbers that I've actually hit in competition, for even estimated maxes. But by the end, it was up to 910 as far as my estimated max, which would be over 2,000 pounds. So, my estimated max went up 70 kilos throughout this block. And, it was a combination of, I did get stronger and I started in a place to be able to give myself room to get stronger. And so that's the biggest takeaway, from my end. And I think every week, every day, how we define success with those sessions is something that's really important. Not feeling like, if I don't go up from last week, then today was a failure. Or if I don't go up from last week or even 2 weeks ago, if I have to take weight off the bar from previous week, that's a failure. So the goal is to get stronger. I was going to say over the period of a block, but I think we can even extend that timeline. The goal is to get stronger. The goal is to get stronger over a period of a year and multiple years. And there's certainly going to be blocks that finish with very, very good success like this, and there's going to be blocks that I finish that this coming block may not be this good, but my job as an athlete is just to be able to give myself that opportunity, and that opportunity doesn't come from taking your shots big early on. And then one of the last biggest things that I've done the last couple blocks is I have not gone all out at the end of blocks. I think it's something that, if you're going to do it at the end of a block, is certainly the time to do it. I did obviously do that one set of deadlifts that was very, very difficult, but it was kind of planned on there, a big reduction in volume on that deadlift day. But both my bench press and my squat the final week were a bit worse than the week before. And I could have loaded up more and, gone after something like 310 or 315 on squats. I think I would have been comfortable hitting those, but they would have been, a 9 RP, a 10 RP. And this block has just been so good. And so at that point, when it's the last week of a block, I'm certainly starting to prioritize more and more that I really want to have this block happen again. And I think not creating a sense of hangover, if I can go into the following block, like I kind of already have, feeling really, really good, that is starting to have a lot more value for me than me finishing with some numbers that I say like, heck yeah, I squatted, 315 in training. It's like, yeah, but I don't want to squat 315. I want to squat 325 at the meet, or 330 or whatever. And so what's the best way for me to accomplish that? So holding back just a little bit has certainly been something that I'm certainly pushing more and more with myself, because I think we are our own worst advocates in that regard. So anyway, this block was super good. I'm excited about the stuff that I have coming up. The next video I'll dive into a lot of the things that I basically have written to adapt off of everything that I just said. So the next week, or the next block video, will be me kind of talking as a coach, coaching David Wilson rather than an athlete, just executing those things. So anyway, you got about 2 more weeks to grab this program, and then it goes away and we'll be moving on to the next one. So anyway, if you like this video, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.